Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Innovation is my favourite subject. It's just great to be talking with such a big, enthusiastic group about innovation. So I own a restaurant that doesn't have a bin. In this presentation, I'm going to be talking about how we don't have a bin, or if it's even possible to not have a bin, but more importantly, why we don't have a bin. I think the best businesses begin with why. Why do we do anything? It's important to understand the motivation and embrace it and drive it into the future. Just before I start the presentation, just to give a little bit of context, I am a chef. I've been running Silo now for 10 years. That's when the pop-up cafe started in Melbourne. It was like a pop-up concept. But 8 years as my own business in the UK. I've worked prior to Silo in just fine dining restaurants, some of the world's best restaurants. And prior to that, I became a chef because I wasn't very good at school. I am dyslexic. I have dyscalculia, and I think I have ADHD. None of which was apparent when I was in education. And needless to say, I didn't do very well in school. Academia, I still get quite tense when I think about that space. Now, when you spend a decade or more of your life being afraid of the thing that you're doing, it gives you a drive to get away from that thing. And it was that escape that led me into a kitchen. This is all kind of known in a sort of reflection, in a retrospective. At the time, I just thought I was really dumb. And then I found my way into a kitchen, and it was full of chefs that acted like pirates, and the violence, the violent language, rather. There was a sense of freedom, which I warmed to, being in an educational system that was the opposite. Made me very much embrace being free to express myself in a kitchen. And something about that 10 years of failing really hard made me very driven to not fail within gastronomy. So I sent my CV to the country's best restaurants, and then later the world's best restaurants, and competitions, and I won BBC Young Chef of the Year in 2009. Over 1,000 contestants under the age of 25, young chefs. So it's a very strange trajectory from feeling like a failure to winning a national cooking competition. And within that space, I expected to find this fulfillment. There was this feeling in childhood, like desperately clambering to be accepted. And then when I was actually accepted as not a failure, I felt empty. It was a very strange sensation, thinking that this is it. I can now retire. I can now just chill for the rest of my life and feel fulfilled, right? Not at all. And so that led me to working around the world. I wasn't sure what I was searching for until I found it. And one day I was in Sydney, down and out in Sydney. I was working 100-hour or 80 to 100-hour weeks in one of the world's best restaurants. I was being bullied. I was not being paid properly. And it was just a toxic environment. And I didn't... Sometimes when you don't have a language for something, you don't know it's a problem. And when the world you know is this aggressive kitchen environment, you accept it, and it just continues. And it wasn't just the toxic behavior in these world-class kitchens, but the waste. And the word sustainability, the word was just not part of my vocabulary. This is now 12 years ago. And it was at that time, well, within this kitchen, we used to fill a skip full of food waste every single day. I was on the protein section prepping pig's heads and had this 3-day process of 110 pig's heads would land on my section. It was a huge kitchen. They would do 110 for lunch and for dinner, massive operation. It was the 24th best restaurant in the world, but I think it was the worst restaurant in the world. But anyway, pig's heads. And I would do this long process of staring at this pig's face and scratching, I'm sorry if there's any vegetarians in the room, but scratching the face flap off the skull and singeing the hair, which if you've smelt burning hair is noxious smell, and then eventually had this head, put it into these huge baths on wheels of brine, brined it overnight, and then the next day tipped that brine down this drain and washed it for another hour of loads of water flushing away, and then put it into sous vide bags or plastic bags, and then we would cook it for 12 hours in a steam oven overnight. It's this endless process, and then we'd chuck it into these huge baths of ice, again, these huge baths of water, ice, and then we'd tip that away, and then it was this chilled gelatinous head in a bag, and stripping the bags off into this black hole of a bin, and then I would butcher the head from yay big to the size of a golf ball, and just the rest of the head would just go into the bin. And I had some experience at a restaurant called St. John in London, and it's nose to tail concept, and it would use everything from nose to tail, and it was the polar opposite of what this was. And there was something about this experience with the pigs staring up at me and judging me for what I was doing and wasting all of it for what? For a few forgettable moments of gluttony. There was something not right about this experience, but again, I didn't have a language. No one was there saying what you're doing is wrong. Still to this day, you waste things, and there is no penalization for being, grossly negligent to the environment with waste. It's still not understood. And at that time, with pig's heads, I was on a very brief break, and it was West Sydney. You've got the Harbour Bridge and the Opera House. I shouldn't say it, but it was a restaurant called Quay, Q-U-A-Y, terrible place. Don't go there. And then, as if by some cosmic serendipity, there was this queue, this snaking queue of people through this tropical rain on the Sydney Harbour, and there was this big building. It was like a temporary building. It had just been erected, and it looked like something out of a Mad Max film, this dystopian, just like ramshackle shack, but it was beautiful. It had thousands of terracotta pots carpeting the walls, and with wild strawberries growing from it, and on the roof was these kind of rusty barrels with big tomato plants hanging over the edges, and cucumbers and aubergines, and a big kind of garden on the roof, and people were obviously keen to get in. And eventually when I got in, there was writing on the walls, and the ceiling, like some mad prophecies from some crazed caveman. And then I met the crazed caveman. His name was Yost, this guy over here. And this building that he'd built was made out of waste materials. Now the idea was it was called the greenhouse, and it was a building that was designed out of waste to grow food. It was a trial ecosystem that was a modular building that could be erected in 2 days and packed down. All the materials are essentially cheap, basic materials. The full design was absolutely genius, but the building was so brilliant because it was classified as a bunker. It was made of waste. It was relatively cheap to make, could be made anywhere in the world, and it was beautiful. And I walked into this building and I didn't know what was going on, but I knew I had this absolute certainty, this feeling that whatever this is, it is the rest of my life. And it was this sort of pig's head to zero waste profit, this juxtaposition that maybe, I'm not sure what happened in my brain, but I was absolutely committed. So Yost, his name's Yost, Yost Bakker. If you're interested in creative geniuses, check him out. He's truly remarkable. He's a 50-year-old man, looks like he's 30, tall, Dutch, blue eyes, sees the future. Really nice guy, really fun guy, and thinks like a child, but is a mad genius who has knowledge for days. You know, he can recite so many facts and figures about so many different things, and he's a second-generation biodynamic farmer and an artist. And anyway, so this guy, when you meet him, you'll understand if he says something's a brilliant idea, you're like, absolutely. And so he said to me in this greenhouse in Sydney, he said to me, could you not have a bin? And I was 23 and I was like, sure. No idea what he was talking about. No idea what relevance a bin had to anything. You know, I'd been working in a place that the bin was a skip and it was filled every day. And then this actual picture was taken this year in spring. We celebrated 10 years of Silo from its kind of conception. It'll be eight years really as a business, but nonetheless, we celebrated that together earlier this year. I just want to share a statement that came out of my head during this time meeting Yost. Yost had that premonition, this idea of zero waste, and that was what was the subtext to Can You Not Have a Bin? He had this building made of waste, but within it, he was creating or generating waste, and he needed a bin. And so you can see the thought process for him, let's not have a bin in a building made of waste. And I committed. I didn't know what the word sustainability meant. I felt very embarrassed and would get hot flushes whenever he'd mention these words that I didn't understand, pretending like I knew. And I remember, just some really embarrassing things came out of my mouth. But nonetheless, he saw something in me, which is great. And I became, like that young chef, become so afraid of failing, of being a failure, that I just needed to absolutely immerse myself into a subject, and would spend days reading fanatically about sustainability and soil nutrition and biodiversity and fossil fuels, and so got quite philosophical all of a sudden and started thinking about the bin, how to not have a bin. Yost said to me, just get things from farmers and get it in reusable vessels that used to be popular 200 years ago, and then just cook everything and don't waste anything, and then if there is some inevitable waste like eggshells or whatever, compost it. And that was his master plan. Brilliant visionary, but it just kind of left me to really flesh out this concept, and stuck me in this little cafe in Melbourne 10 years ago, and I tried to not have a bin, and under that direction, and just thinking, I spent a lot of time, it was a very profound time in my life where I was thinking about how to not have a bin, and it led me down a path of thinking about what is waste. is it, I had this vision of like a bin in a jungle, and realizing that there is no bin in the jungle. There is no bin in a desert or in an ocean. The bin is in these urban, areas that humans have created. Waste is a human thing. And did the bin exist 300 years ago? When did the bin start to exist? And so it's become this really interesting reverse engineered design, creating silo. Not having a bin, has defined the rest of my life and silo. But what's amazing in that time I discovered was when I was working with farmers and buying whole wheat and cream in a pail and churning it into butter and milling whole wheat into flour and then making products like bread and shortbread, really basic fundamental things. I'd spent the last 15, 14 years in the world's best restaurants, and what I was making was far superior in its purity, in its integrity, in its flavor to anything that I'd been doing before. And I thought, wow, I'm trying to not have a bin, and I've discovered a superior product. Absolutely superior. The flavor of this shortbread tastes of wheat, tastes of cultured cream, it tastes of grass, it tastes of, it tasted of nature. It sounds like a really pretentious thing to say, but it really does. And that's an industrial measure to process food to a point which it's then no longer natural. Processed flour is just dust, dead dust. Processed sugar, processed butter, these things don't taste of anything. When you do it properly, it's amazing how delicious these things are. So throughout this presentation, I just ask you to keep an open mind. We can't design out the problem with the same thinking that designed in the problem. I sometimes think about society and the way we were born into a world in which we're told that this is the world, this is the way the world is, and from a young age we kind of have these blinkers over our eyes. We just don't question the way things are. I would have never ever started asking these questions if it wasn't for a strange series of events and amazing inspiration, amazing mentors. You just accept that a bin is part of life, and it's only been a part of life for a very, very short window of time. It's a blink in human history the bin has started to exist. So, I often think about, this innovation pathway as taking off the blinkers. This is the perspective of a society that doesn't question the way things are. This is the perspective of a society that does question the way things are. This is the thinking that we need to design a better future. This is a restaurant that questioned the way things are. This is a restaurant made out of waste materials, regenerative materials, designed to not have a bin. Designed to work with regenerative farming systems directly, to receive everything in reusable vessels, and to cook food which is natural, the way nature intended, to nourish ourselves, nourish our customers, and generate no waste. You can see this is Silo. This is in Hackney Wick in East London. I'd like to think this is a beautiful restaurant. The design brief to Nina, the designer, was we must make one of London's sexiest restaurants, not for a superficial reason, but because the association that we have as humans with waste is ugly. It's designed to be hidden. It's gross. And if you've got the word zero waste, which is what we've been known for, because it's quite a radical idea. So every time someone talks about silo, the word waste is in there. And so I said to Nino, it has to be beautiful. It has to be absolutely sexy, gorgeous, elegant, like the food, because we need to work harder than any other restaurant to prove that we can not have a bin, we can do the right thing for the environment, and it be absolutely delicious. There is no compromise. This is another view of the restaurant. Some ideas you're starting to see. The flour mill over there, I've mentioned that, where we churn the butter. The oats are rolled. We have a projected menu. This means we are a paperless business. We change the menu on a tablet or a computer, and it's live with our website. All of this pre-industrialism doesn't have to be like non-techie. It can be really techie. So this is a drawing that I've done. This is any food system in the world could follow these guidelines and mitigate 95% of what would have necessitated a bin. So this is not necessarily strictly silo. I mean, it is, but this could apply to a cafeteria, a canteen, any food system. When you deal directly with the origin of food, with nature, you have this ability to say to the farmer, I would like to have the produce that you're growing, creating, in a vessel that can be traded back and forth and endlessly. So when they come in directly, they bring in a pail of milk or cream, and we can give them an empty pail of milk or cream back. And then we cut out all the unnecessary waste. Secondly, the whole food preparation. We've gone to all this effort to get this amazing regenerative produce in our restaurant. Why would we waste it? So it's about turning all the surplus, all the primary cuts into something that will go onto the plate to maximize resources, to minimize waste. And then finally, whatever remains, we can compost. And that can either go back to the farmers who are coming in with their produce, or it can go into a garden, it can go into a compost system in a local allotment. But yeah, composting. So this can be applied to any food system in the world, no matter what country. So it's a very simple design idea. The last 5%, I'm not going to talk about at this stage, the last 5% of what would necessitate a bin. So produce comes in reusable crates. Milk and cream, as mentioned, comes in reusable stainless steel pails. All the cleaning products come in these big barrels. Doesn't have to be those barrels, it can be any size barrels, but it's the principle of just refilling barrels from this company. It's a truly closed loop circular system with all of our cleaning products to clean the whole building. How do you get exotic ingredients? How do you get chocolate, coffee, sugar? We've got the Tres Hombres boat on that side, and then this is a smaller French ship called the Nordlies coming in through Tower Bridge. This is maybe 20% of our exotic goods, but nonetheless, it's an amazing step in the right direction. The Nordlies over there literally sailed sugar that was harvested by the Mugi tribe in the Sierra Nevada mountains in Colombia. Put it onto that boat, and it sailed in Tower Bridge, up the canal to where Silo is in Hackney Wick, and we had bags of sugar from Colombia that was powered by just the wind. So it's emission-free cargo. This is not to boast, this is just to say that when you really commit to innovation, magic really can happen. So closed-loop cooking, milling flour, churning butter, as we've discussed. Something a little bit more advanced, we're growing mold, white mold. This is called koji. This has existed for thousands of years in Asia, making misos, fish sauces, soy sauces. There's a microbial network within that white mold that can preserve food, and we apply it to waste. So all of the surplus within our system, add koji, salt, put it in a barrel for 3 months, and it turns to gold. Making sourdough, as you'd imagine, but the slide on the right, just soaking all that waste bread. That's going to come up in a couple of slides. You have a whole thing from nature. 50% of fish is wasted, but in Silo, of course, we don't waste it. From guts to gold, the koji, being the star of the show, converts waste into these incredible umami flavors that are preservatives, shelf stable, etc., and actually define our menu. Our menu would be described as fire and fermentation. Some other examples of koji-based fermentation, cheese rinds, dairy cow trim, cuttlefish scraps. All these scraps can be turned into the most remarkable flavors, and I challenge you to come and try them at Silo. Of all the food that comes in, I reckon it's more like 10% goes into compost. It's the better we get as chefs, the more resourceful we get, the less that comes down, the more that comes down. This is a deep dive diagram of closed loop cooking. So we make bread and butter. From that we have bran, flour, butter and buttermilk. The bran and the buttermilk being the surplus. The buttermilk goes into a dulce de leche ice cream. The bran goes into a kind of wafer. And as you can see, the final course, the ice cream sandwich, is made from all of the surplus from this, including the waste bread from this course itself gets turned into a kind of Marmite-ish sweet sour syrup, which goes on the ice cream sandwich. So it's just a diagram to illustrate circular thinking and closed loop cooking. Minimal, supernatural, modern food. Composting, you can use a compost machine for bigger operations. We gave ours away because it was using half of the restaurant's worth of energy, and we just wasn't touching the sides. Gone to a more conventional composting system. New waste, the word upcycling is not very sexy, so I thought it deserved a new title. New waste is materials being reborn. There's an inevitable amount of waste in the world, no matter how the system emits it. And what do we do when that waste exists? We apply creativity, determination, and innovation. Some examples of that: plates made from waste plastic bags. Big, that idea scaled up. Industrial sheets of waste post-industrial plastic turned into sheets that could be designed into tables, chairs, stages, whatever. I was foraging for nitrous oxide canisters through Hackney Wick. My friend Tim made a chef's knife out of waste nitrous oxide canisters, and the blue handle is made from milk bottle tops. The relationship between energy and value. You don't want to spend 3 hours making a carrot top oil if it tastes of nothing. But if you make a fig leaf oil, it tastes of amazing things. And likewise, you've just got to be very mindful whenever upcycling waste, how much energy versus value. This is Mark. He's a potter above the restaurant. We have a pottery above Silo. And he's crushing all the glass into things that we need. So here... Ooh. So, I don't know if I can play that, but yeah, oh, there you go. So we're crushing it in that machine that you saw. We imported it from New Zealand. It's an amazing machine to create kind of glass flour. And then we can melt it in a regular potter's kiln to close the loop and turn it into things that we need, whether it's light shades, plates, crockery, tiles, and yeah, just to demonstrate all the things that I'm talking about is a system with no loose ends. Like glass, single-use glass, is an inevitable material waste that's in our system, but we don't want that to become waste, so we find an innovative way of closing the loop. I told you a lie. I said we don't have a bin. We do. There's actually 4 of these. This is our actual waste. No matter how hard we try, plastic just seems to find its way into the restaurant. It's an imperfect system. Failure, success. When we started in 2014, we failed hard. We probably made, if we made 10 things, maybe 1 of them would be successful. And that's the path to innovation. The greater the innovation, the greater the struggle, the greater the friction. Change is hard. Change is really hard. Anybody going into some radical innovation thinking that it's going to be a walk in the park, heed this warning. Yeah. Some basic business. We spend a lot of money on staff, probably 45% of our total revenue, but we save a lot of money on ingredients. We're not wasting them, so that price is halved, and we're dealing directly with the farmers, so you're not paying that sort of wholesale middle section of the food industry. So we have a 10% overall ingredient cost, which is unheard of. And then there's a book called A Food System for the Future. And just to finish on a perspective, again, what is our motivation? How do we see the world? A perspective that I have, and I wanted to share that to finish this presentation is humans feed humans. We think about ourselves. We use industrial food systems to farm the earth, to pillage the earth, and to feed ourselves, and we don't feed the planet. A zero-waste food system, call it a zero-waste food system, a regenerative system, a sustainable food system, I give a fuck about nature food system. It's about balance. If we feed the planet, we can continue to feed ourselves. And it's a really simple perspective and also a motivation, I think, that's a good one to end on. So yeah, thank you very much for listening, and yeah.
Wait.